This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, I love when a show starts like this. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Real Talk. I'm taking a look at the live chat. We have it going as soon as Johnny kicks off the live stream on 7 different social media platforms. That presented by California Closets. We take a look into the live chat, and there's Leslie right out of the gate saying, "Welcome back, Charles." Mariah's right there. Adler is back. That's right. This is a very special episode of the show as we get to reconnect with our good pal, Charles Adler, the Emmy Award-winning, RTDNA Lifetime Achievement Award-winning talk radio legend who, as you know, was appointed to the Senate of Canada mid-last year. That meant the end of his recurring Monday morning segments with us here on the show, but we're grateful that he's made himself available. We figured it was time for a check-in. Plus, now that he's settled in, Adler's using his new platform, his new opportunity, his new responsibility to impact change for humans and animals. We're going to get into what's driving that. His new mission coming up in just a second. Plus, the Alberta Chambers of Commerce are in the house with us today. We're going to take a look at Alberta's response. The Premier Danielle Smith down at Mar-a-Lago meeting with President-elect Donald Trump ahead of his inauguration on January 20th, pleading the case for Alberta Oil and Gas. One has to assume this is the federal government's, a state of flux, so to speak. Don't have to tell you the leadership race to replace Justin Trudeau is underway, and it kind of means for the most part that the federal government, or at least the Prime Minister's office, maybe not functioning exactly how everybody would like. What are the implications for the business community? We'll go there with Jason Leslie from the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. He's got his eye on Alberta Business today. This episode is happening with the presenting sponsorship of Relo. That's Alberta's top online real estate school where better real estate training starts. You can find them at relo.ca. That's relo.ca. They're the only real estate school that sets you up with a professional practice network, professional development webinars, plus a whole lot more. Say hello to financial independence and unlimited earning opportunities as you build your own career in real estate. You can explore their pre-licensing courses online. Find the one that fits best for you. If you're looking at that Alberta residential or commercial real estate bundle, make sure you use the promo code Ryan100. That's all one word, Ryan100. When you get started at relo.ca, you'll save a couple of $100. If you're applying or registering for both of them, Relo's all about value, and that's why they offer extras to every course they offer. You can find the details online at relo.ca. Well, I'll tell you, this is a great feeling welcoming back the fella that has been a wonderful friend to this show since inception, his own broadcast career, a storied and legendary one. He's now applying his perspective, his gifts, his talents, and his passion to the Senate of Canada as a senator out of the home province of Manitoba. And he's already here doing shameless plugs for, what is it now, Canada Dry Diet Ginger Ale. This is what you're getting into at 8:30 in the morning or 9:30 time.
I just wanted to say that this show is not about me. It's about Canada. I want to say hello to all the humans, all the animals, especially the horses, my beloved horses. And isn't it time to make Mar-a-Lago Canada's 11th province?
Yes, I think it is. We've been fielding offers thinking that it might be the best move for maybe Western Canada to offer to pick up Oregon, Washington, Montana, maybe Idaho. But yeah, I don't know if anybody had considered Mar-a-Lago or maybe the great state of Florida.
Well, I mentioned Mar-a-Lago because it's got a special place in Donald Trump's heart, and Canada's a special place in our heart. And of course, the question always is, how do you make the other person that you're dealing with, possibly negotiating with, how do you make him have some empathy just in case he doesn't have it? And so I just want him to know that Canada is as sacred to us as Mar-a-Lago is to the next president.
Yeah, no kidding. This is, there's a million angles that we can hit this from. Why don't I put this audio clip? This was a brief interview with a congressional representative out of the state of Texas, Republican Brandon Gill. He's a young guy, by the way. He's like 30 years of age, so maybe he's just not seasoned enough to realize how his comments about Canada would land with their neighbors to the north. But I know you saw this, Chuck. I want to play the quick clip, and then I'll get you to respond. But this is Texas Representative Brandon Gill talking about not just Canada, but Canada's in the mix as one of the territories, he calls us, that should be honored to be considered as a potential state. Here he is.
This is a Democrat Party that is more interested in advancing the interests of criminal illegal aliens on American territory committing crimes against American citizens than they are in advancing the interests of this nation. I find that utterly repugnant, and that is something President Trump is going to fix. And listen, I think that the people of Panama, I think that the people of Greenland, I think that the people of Canada, for that matter, should be honored that President Trump wants to bring these territories in under the American fold.
Okay, they don't seem honored, just to be clear, but I do want to ask you, because of this.
Yeah, so he's kind of smirking when he says it, but he figures that we should be honored to be brought into the fold.
You know, the thing is that he's got access to the same Google all of us have access to, so we can go to dictionary.com on there, Congressman. You can find Merriam-Webster if you prefer that, the Oxford Dictionary. So I did a little bit of show prep, and apparently every one of those definitions, when it comes to honor, it doesn't matter which dictionary you go to, the cheap ones, the better ones, the ones that have lots of heritage, the ones that have no heritage, all of them give you the definition of honor, and none of them would accommodate what you're talking about. So my guess is, as the CNN host implied, you may not know what you're talking about.
Yeah, how is this landing with? I mean, you know, you're rubbing shoulders now with your Senate colleagues. You're spending more time in Ottawa now than you probably did your entire career. Correct me if I'm wrong, but how have the comments about the 51st state and Governor Trudeau and et cetera, and it's not limited to the Liberals, by the way. Donald Trump on the record just a few days ago saying he doesn't care what Pierre Poilievre says. He may win, he may not. I don't care, said the president. How's this landing in Ottawa?
Well, just so we're clear here, yes, I'm a senator, honored and privileged to be a senator. Every day I wake up, I ask myself, you know, what can I do as a senator to make Canada better? But on this show, just so everyone is clear, I'm not speaking for the Senate. I'm just speaking for myself. And
we knew that was coming.
Well, if I'm speaking for a number of Canadians, I'm privileged to have people feel that way about it. But I just have to put that out there. That so when it comes to people on Parliament Hill, whether they're in the Senate, whether they're senators or staffers, whether they're people who are members of Parliament or their staffers, the wonderful people who drive the shuttles and keep our offices clean and all the rest of it, there's a very, very deep consensus in the country. And I'm sure that Parliament Hill reflects the country on this particular note. I don't think it's controversial politically. Most of us are very proud to be Canadian. I know you've got some polls out there. Angus Reid did a poll recently, which I found kind of disturbing, not taking a shot at Angus or his organization, but it was something like less than a third of Canadians respond positively to the statement, I'm very proud to be a Canadian. I cannot remember a time, Ryan, and maybe you feel differently about this, but I cannot remember a time when I didn't feel proud to be Canadian. And I can't remember a time when my Canadian pride had anything to do with what was going on Parliament Hill. At times, it might have had something to do with how Team Canada was doing against the Russians and how NHL teams based in Canada were doing against NHL teams based in the United States. But that was never serious, and it never seriously impacted on my Canadian pride. I'm just as proud to be a Canadian today as I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I'm not going to let a politician, and I know technically I'm a politician now, but I'm not going to let any politician dampen my pride in Canada. And when Donald Trump says what he says, all it does is reinforce to me just how proud I am of being a Canadian. And so when it comes to honor, it's the honorable position to support the country that you live in. And it's dishonorable to talk about taking over someone else's country. When I talk about annexing Mar-a-Lago, I'm doing it from a position of humor, from a position of making a point that we don't, as Canadians, we don't do things like that because it lacks honor, it lacks dignity. And so the congressperson, once again, ought to look up the definition of honor. And hopefully when he does, if he understands the simple definition, he'll understand that the idea of anyone, whether they're in Greenland or Panama or Canada, being honored to be taken over by another country, that's ridiculous.
In our Real Talk live chat, powered by Park Power, Glenna says, I think that poll is nonsense. And Tracy is demanding a poll about the validity of polls, which I think is probably a good call there, Tracy. But here it is, and people can read it themselves, dig into the details at angusreid.org. Back in 1991, Senator Adler, Angus Reid and his team polled Canadians, 65% at that time answered that they have a deep emotional attachment to Canada. I love the country and what it stands for. 65%, 2/3 in 1991. The number dropped slightly in 2016. Justin Trudeau would have been prime minister. Donald Trump would have been president of the United States to 62%. So 6 out of 10 Canadians. That number now in 2024, 49%, less than half, reporting a deep emotional attachment to Canada, loving the country and what it stands for. Also of interest, in 1991, 5% of Canadians polled figured that Canada should join the U.S. When Trump was elected in 2016, 2% of Canadians felt that way. Now in 2024, it's 6%. So a negligible number, but still the number's tripled over the past 8 years. You read into it at all?
Well, look, I mean, there are people who have made a lot of political points in this country in the last couple of years saying that Canada is broken. And while I was on this show and elsewhere objecting strenuously to that, because you can talk about a government being broken or a government being damaged and maybe damaging Canadians in some way, but the idea that Canada is broken it doesn't work for me. And here's the big fat but, and we always have to put the big fat buts into these conversations because we always have to ask ourselves, okay, so do other people share our opinions? It's entirely possible that many people think Canada is broken. And I often wonder, when it comes to this business of Trump thinking that Canada wants to be joining the United States, I wonder how much of that has impacted on Donald Trump and his colleagues. I mean, they're listening to this business over the years of Canada is broken, Canada is broken. The people promulgating that statement are ahead in the polls by a significant number. Maybe they simply believe that Canada feels that it's broken, that's how Canadians feel. And maybe they do feel that there are a number of Canadians who are like Kevin O'Leary, who can hardly wait to join the United States of America. It's entirely possible that some of this stuff about Canada becoming a perfected state, maybe some of the idea for that is actually coming from the rhetoric that's emanating in this country.
Yeah, this is reportedly, I know this audience is aware that Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith was down meeting with the President of the United States, President-elect Trump, at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. Sounds like it wasn't maybe necessary. It wasn't like a summit, but she made her way down there. It sounds like at the invite of Kevin O'Leary, the Canadian entrepreneur and television star, and they managed to carve out some time on two different occasions at what looks like a dinner reception and then in what appears to be maybe a break between the president's tea times or something like that. He's wearing his golf shoes. Said Danielle Smith, she's down there to advocate for and to champion Alberta, to try to, bend the ear of the president-elect and try to make things happen. I hear differing opinions on whether or not she should be down there, whether or not it's the right move. What's your take?
Look, one of the reasons I'm proud to be Canadian is I think of this as the freest country in the world. So on the one hand, I can't say whether I'm a senator or not. I can't say, well, this is the freest country in the world. I love this country. But the Premier of Alberta should not be allowed to or should not be meeting with the next president of the United States. I'm not in that camp. People should feel free. Canadians should feel free, whether they're premiers or not, to go to any part of the United States. And if they're invited by whether it's Kevin O'Leary or Kevin O'Leary on behalf of Donald Trump, but the point is if the Trump people want to allow Danielle Smith to be at Mar-a-Lago and have a special meeting with the next president, I see no problem with that at all. And this, in my opinion, should not be political. We are Canadians. We ought to be proud to be Canadians and proud that people who are about to become president of the United States want to have dinner with us. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, Lightning Rod says Kevin O'Leary would sell your children for money. That's probably true, and I'm waiting. And I'm waiting for the advent of comments about who was driving the boat. I know that Kevin O'Leary's reputation took a big hit, no pun intended, after a fatal boat crash where police acknowledged alcohol was involved. He was exonerated, though. He wasn't charged. But I know that stuck with a lot of people. I know what I see.
The boat thing really bothers me, and I'm not one of these preachy people saying you should be bothered by this and you shouldn't be bothered by that. You should feel this and you should feel that. So that's not where I'm coming from. But the reason the boat thing bothers me as a joke is because someone actually died. No one was convicted. Kevin O'Leary was exonerated. But the thing is, somebody died, and when a human being dies, that to me sort of becomes something I don't really.
100%. I think the victim's family probably doesn't find much humor in the Kevin O'Leary motorboat.
No, and that's once again, it's the empathy thing. You've got to think about who the story impacts. No one's more impacted by that story than the victim's family. Ask yourself, okay, how do they feel? Okay, it's not a joking matter. By the way, next time you run, and next time Johnny Infamous runs a screen grab of Kevin O'Leary dressed in nothing but white, please give me some advance warning, because
Johnny, can we pull up that photo again? I think most people have seen it. That is a hell of a suit that he's wearing.
Yeah. I need to.
He matches the patio tiles.
I need glare protection. That's too much, John.
Adler's got his blue blockers on for everybody that's listening on the podcast. I actually love the O'Leary suit. I think if you're going to be down in Florida hobnobbing with Donald Trump, he matches his golf shoes. I mean, the whole suit matches the golf shoes.
Remember those commercials for Glad? One of the great companies.
The garbage bag guy?
Because I'm speaking to Alberta right now, not just one of the great companies of all time, one of the great companies that uses Canadian, made in Alberta, drilled in Alberta petroleum. Yes, Glad bags. There used to be a character on the Glad bag commercials, the garbage bag commercials.
Yeah.
And it was a man from Glad. And O'Leary looks just like the man from Glad, dressed in nothing but white.
Yeah, we've managed to pull up a commercial from 1998. It's not very fancy, and it dates itself here, but look at this. This one's for free. We'll give Glad this one for free, and I'm sure if we leave it up at some point, we're going to see the guy pop up, this familiar reference. Is that Canadian? I don't know. Do we get to take credit for that? Gosh, I'm running the entire ad here.
Americans, including the people who make Glad, use Canadian petroleum. An awful lot of Canadian petroleum is used. And they say that's why some of this tariff stuff makes no sense at all. I mean, you have to ask yourself, once again, the empathy thing. Okay, so who does this affect most? Well, it affects consumers, but it affects Canadian and American businesses. If there's anything we learned during the pandemic, and I think Donald Trump should have learned this, you never muck with. That's a great Canadian word, muck. Okay, you don't muck with the supply chain, because you muck up the economy. You create inflation. The last thing America needs, the last thing Canada needs, the last thing any of us need, no matter how we feel about our country and how we feel about politics, is more inflation. You muck with the supply chain. In other words, the supply of Canadian petroleum to the United States and all of the other stuff they're talking about. You absolutely guarantee a mucking up of the supply chain. We need less mucking.
Live chat powered by Park Power. The Scorned Poet is watching us live on YouTube this morning. Says Kevin O'Leary does not speak for Canadians. He has no mandate. My take is this. I understand like a new political leader is coming in. The president's coming in. He's obviously what do you call him? A business-friendly president. He didn't exactly run on social justice issues. Trump is all about the economy. And people will write into the show and say Trump is about his economy. He's about his bottom line. He's about what's best for him. My point being, when you're talking dollars and cents, that's what's going to resonate with Donald Trump. I understand why entrepreneurs, I understand why billionaires are wanting to bend his ear, and I understand why billionaires, some of the world's richest, will have a great degree of influence in and on the White House, including Elon Musk. So I get why Kevin O'Leary's there. I understand what he's trying to do. He's talking about this economic union stuff between Canada and the U.S., wanting to freeze out Mexico. I don't have to tell you, Charles, he has this big vision for Wonder Valley, a $70 billion data center that he wants to build outside Grand Prairie. We talked to a number of different voices on that, on gauging the level of seriousness. Max Fawcett thinks it's a joke. We talked to Danielle Smith about it. She's intrigued. We talked to the mayor of Grand Prairie, Jackie Clayton. She's not going to poo-poo it. Like any responsible mayor, she's not going to take a big dump on the idea. It would obviously be a game changer for her jurisdiction, for the city of Grand Prairie, and for the region, obviously. And in the context of Danielle Smith, she's there as a guest of Kevin O'Leary. Fine. I understand some people don't love that Danielle Smith, appears on Fox and talks to Tucker Carlson and Jordan Peterson and all the people that really rub them the wrong way. I will say, to speak objectively, as the premier of a province whose economy is driven by oil and gas, to try to have some sort of an influence or provide some perspective to a president that's threatening crippling tariffs on industries, including oil and gas, I do think it is a prudent and defensible move to try to speak to the president, including when the federal government, I don't know if I can say in disarray, but I think it's probably safe to suggest that Justin Trudeau doesn't exactly have the respect of Donald Trump, especially since he will soon be leaving his post as prime minister. And so all these people, I understand why Donald Trump rubs some people the wrong way, for sure. I understand why Danielle Smith rubs some people the wrong way. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that it's inappropriate for her to go down and try to get a meeting with the guy who's going to be the president of the United States, like it or not.
Ryan, does any real talker watching or listening right now, does any of them think that if Naheed Nenshi had an invite to Mar-a-Lago, that Mr. Nenshi would say, no, not doing that? Are you kidding me?
Of course he'd be there. Yeah. And of course he would not be invited. We can agree on both.
That's true. That's true, but the premiers do not turn down invitations to meet with presidents and presidents-elect. So I don't care whether you're liberal or conservative or NDP. It's ridiculous. It is the most powerful office in the land. This isn't me sucking up to Americans or the president. It's, factually speaking, okay, the most powerful office in the land. And when you have an opportunity to make your case, whatever the case is, no matter what the subject, and the president-elect or the president invites you to make your case, you go directly to the airport and you do not pass go.
We've got some comments here. I love this one from Tracy in the chat. She says, the love for Canada from the United States has been off the charts. Check this out. I'm showing just one of these Canadian water bombers at work. I think this one's right off Newport Beach, it looks like. And obviously a fleet of these remarkable machines and some of the most skilled and daring pilots in the world down in the state of California over these past number of days, doing what they can to get these fires under control. Absolutely wild, absolutely heartbreaking. I shared last week that our family was impacted. My dad's brother and his wife, their house burned down. But really, I think a reminder as well, and I noted this last week on the show, a reminder of the elements of this friendship, of this neighborly relationship. And I mean, obviously we can get into World War II and everything else as well. But I think that these wildfires and these Canadian water bombers down there kind of also just served as a bit of a reminder that we've always had the United States back, or most times have had the United States back, and they've had ours as well. And that's something worth working for.
You know, when I got sworn in a few months ago, it was impossible for me not to think about how my dad would have felt about it. And it was impossible for me not to know that there's no way that my dad would have been alive, and therefore no way that I would have been born had it not been for Canada and the United States and the young men whose lives were sacrificed when fascism was threatening this planet, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and some others prevented that from happening. So during the very, very toughest times, and, you know, I couldn't help but think of the geography, you know, where I was sworn in was only steps away from where Canada declared war against Germany. Canada was one of the very first to declare war against Nazi Germany. It was on September 9th, 1939, and that declaration happened just steps away from where I was being sworn in. Yes, there was a deep feeling in my heart about my father, a deep feeling in my heart about how many people in this country and the United States were rescued from the worst of totalitarianism, from the Nazi called Adolf Hitler himself, because of young Americans and Canadians fighting together. And I just wish that spirit and that memory and the significance of all of that were uppermost in our minds as we discuss this ridiculous situation about tariffs. We shouldn't be tariffing each other. We should be holding each other's hands.
Beautifully
as
said.
we are, by the way, in California. There's another, I'm sorry, some people say, Chuck, enough of history. What about right now? Okay, right now in California, Canadians are showing their bravery, their courage, and their gifts in helping Americans to save their lives and their property. It's happening right now. So
yeah, man, look at this. Look at these. These are Canadian planes. Like this is something that the Canadians should be proud of. The pilots that are accomplishing this and that are embarking on this are doing incredible work. And I know that, like, we see this. I hate to refer to it as wildfire season, but we see it, in particular in Western Canada, it seems, and parts of the United States. But when disaster strikes like this, we've seen wildland firefighters come up from Mexico to British Columbia to Alberta. Canadian pilots head down to California, and it's just this is when these relationships are working, and this is when they're at their best. When residents of these jurisdictions, in this case Southern California, are experiencing the worst natural disaster they've seen in quite some time, and that's saying something for a region that's seen, obviously awful fires, earthquakes, mudslides. Like, it can be a nightmare down there. And I don't know, I guess when you go back to proud to be a Canadian, those pilots are making me pretty proud to be a Canadian right now.
I'm proud to be a Canadian, and I'm proud to be a good neighbor. And I think of the Americans as good neighbors as well. We'll get this tariff thing behind us at some point and go back to being the good neighbors that we were meant to be.
We're talking to Senator Charles Adler, who's made time to be available for us on this Monday. Chuck, coming up in just am I still allowed to call you? I think I can still call you Chuck from time to time.
Nothing,
Yeah, well, I just
you
want to...
You have certain honors and privileges. I have certain honors and priviges. All of our real talkers.
You don't have to pay for parking anymore, I bet, right? You don't have to pay for parking. What do you get? Do you get special license plates? What's been the What's been the coolest part? Do you have a driver? What's the coolest part about being a senator?
But I don't drive in Ottawa. I'm based in Winnipeg, as you know. That's where I am right now, and that's where my vehicle is. I take cabs, and there are these wonderful shuttle drivers, these little minivans that drive us from building to building on Parliament Hill, and they're generally former Ottawa bus drivers, and they're some of the best people we have. And, for people who worry about me or others being in a bubble, these are the guys that prevent us from being too bubblicious. Okay, they definitely keep us in touch with the real world. I love them to bits, and it's one of the things I look forward to every day I'm in Ottawa, is hanging with the shuttle drivers.
Okay, in just a second, we're going to pay a couple of bills here, and then I want to ask you about your work with the Senate. You've been sworn in for what, like 4 or 5 months now, approximately.
I got the training wheels on.
You got the training wheels. Yeah, they're coming off, and you're already using your voice for one cause in particular, but I know you have more, so we want to catch up with you more with Senator Charles Adler coming up in just a quick second. This conversation is happening with the support of the team at North Road Investment Council. Real Talkers, when it comes to managing your wealth, you need a team that you can trust. And North Road Investment Council specializes in tailored financial strategies for high net worth individuals with a focus on personalized service and long-term results. They'll guide you through every market condition. They've seen it all. Secure your financial future with North Road and learn more about their digital risk advisory services. They'll make sure that you, your family, and your wealth are protected. You can learn more today at northroadic.com. In mid-2024, we rolled out our partnership with UCAN Youth Services, and I hope that you're getting a sense of how proud we are to be working alongside this really, really incredible group, a nonprofit based out of Edmonton. UCAN Youth Services, a nonprofit charitable organization dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. You can check out their Relentless podcast, their docu-series on their website that story of exactly what they do and how they do it. That's at ucan.ca. While you're on the website, make sure you check out the information on the comedy nights. They've got 6 nights of comedy coming up in the month of March, starting on March 10th, all in support of UCAN. I'm going to be there hosting a table at one of them. It's going to be an absolute blast. I'd love to see you there. UCAN Youth Services, 6 incredible nights of comedy. Learn more about that at ucancomedy.com. And a shout out to our friends at Complete Care Restoration. They're the ones that built our studio. So when I talk about this group, when I talk about these professionals, we're talking with an informed perspective. We watched them work. We saw them treat our project like it was their own. They're in the business of restoring properties, rebuilding peace of mind, in particular after disasters like fires, floods, sewer backups, burst pipes, you name it. They do it, and they'll work directly with your insurance company to save you the headache and the hassle. Heaven forbid, if disaster strikes, keep Complete Care Restoration in mind and let them know that Real Talk sent you. Hanging out with Senator Charles Adler, previously our Monday morning stalwart, but obviously he's accepted a higher calling, serving his fellow Manitobans and his Canadians in the Senate of Canada. We've pulled a clip of you talking about live horse exports in just a moment, and we'll put that in front of our audience so they can hear what you've been saying to your Senate colleagues, Chuck. But first, I think people might be interested to know, I know that this is a cause that famed singer Jan Arden has been big on, and I know that you have a ton of respect for her, but is Jan the reason that this was on your radar, or how did the live horse export trade get on your radar?
Well, I always thank people like Jan Arden for putting wonderful causes right into people's faces, right up on their screens. And if it wasn't for Jan Arden, who I love dearly, I wouldn't have known about this either. When I first heard about it, I said to myself, I know that Jan checks her facts, but I sure as hell hope she checked these, because this is so disgusting. My first take, once again, as a proud Canadian, was to say this can't possibly be happening. Many other countries, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, and others, don't do this anymore. What don't they do? They don't export live horses to get on planes, to travel on planes in cargo, where the temperatures, of course, we're talking about no insulation, so cargo, no different than any other package, where the temperatures are hitting minus 20, minus 25, minus 30, minus 40, okay, for more than 20 hours from Canada to Asia, mostly Japan, so they can be turned into, I guess, a form of sushi. The point is, these horses suffer. They're in these crates. They're standing up. They can't have any food. They can't lie down. They can't have any water. They are being tortured and traumatized. And sometimes at the end of the trail, the horses are obviously tortured and traumatized because they're obviously dead. Nothing is more traumatizing than death itself. And so that's what we're doing, apparently. I didn't want to believe this, but Jan is a truth teller. This is what Canadians are doing to Canadian horses. They're being bred on these feedlots. They don't even have barns. They're just kind of on the lots all year round. So their entire life is nothing but trauma and torture. And they're put on these planes where they're traveling, as I say, for more than 20 hours without food or water or rest or insulation. And they're basically being exported to Japan because it's a delicacy for the Japanese. And God bless the Japanese, but I don't think that there's any law in Canada that says that we absolutely have to turn our horses into sushi. But at the moment, there's no law against it. And so the only thing that can be done at the moment, because I did what I could to help pass a private member's bill in the Senate, but because we're prorogued now, there's a word I never thought I'd ever use, because we're on pause, every bill that came before the Senate and the House of Commons is dead, okay? As dead as some of those horses. And so what can Canadians do right now? They can do their best to contact the Agriculture Minister, Lawrence Macaulay, and get him through Ag Canada to pass a regulation to say, Canadians love their agriculture. We're very proud of our agricultural products, but this is not a product that we want to serve up to anybody anywhere in the world. We don't want our horses to be bred, to be slaughtered, to be turned into sushi after a 21-hour plane trip.
Leslie's watching us live on YouTube in our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. She says, I'm so grateful you're working on this, Charles. She says Canada is so behind on these laws. Steve says live export is just cruel. Ms. Katie says Jan's posted videos of these horses at the airport if people want to check them out. She says there's no heat. Sharon says this is absolutely terrible. For audience members that may not have heard your address to the Senate, we wanted to pick just a portion of it. It's obviously an impassioned plea like you just delivered, Charles, here on Real Talk. So here's a quick portion of it. This is what went out, Real Talkers. This is what Senator Adler's colleagues heard from him just a short time ago.
The regulatory requirements stated that the transport time of horses had to be less than 28 hours. The regulation does not require that the horses are fed or given water or provide enough space to lie down to rest during this time. No food, no water, no rest for 28 hours. According to Caitlin Mitchell from Animal Justice, recent scientific research shows that even very brief road trips of 3 or more hours can affect horses' endocrine and immune functions. They hurt horses. 3 hours, never mind 28. If you consider the journey of these gentle, majestic, sentient beings from the feedlots where they're raised into trucks for ground transport for several hours, to airports, to being pulled out of those trucks, in some cases prodded after they're pulled out of those trucks and put into wooden crates to sit on a noisy airport tarmac for a period of time, to then be put on a cargo plane to endure a long flight, all without food, water, or rest, it's entirely reasonable to believe there is a high probability these horses will suffer or sustain an injury during this process, or worse. Injury or worse. A lot of dead horses. Not to mention that we have no way of knowing how long it will take before these horses are able to drink, eat, and rest when they do arrive at their destination.
That's Senator Charles Adler speaking to his colleagues. In our live chat, Chuck Leslie says even within Canada, food animal transport law is some of the best in the world. We've talked about this before on the show. I know it's a conversation that makes people, in particular in the agriculture industry, uncomfortable for sure. M. Aitken says horses don't pee when they're moving. That's why when you long haul, you stop frequently so they can pee. Ken says this is just a disgusting way to treat living creatures. Meantime, Vamp Fashion says, listen, we've been exporting horse meat, live horses for food for decades. He says people in other nations, our allies, think it's just food. And Vamp's not wrong. Like, you know, this is a conversation I try to have with people. I get outraged. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary The Cove. It's about the dolphin slaughter in Japan, and it's actually really tough to watch. I was absolutely furious after I watched it. But then, you know, a friend of mine was sort of saying, like, buddy, you know, he says to me, like, you love tuna fishing, and I do. He says, you love fishing for tuna. Like, he says, do you like cry or say a prayer before you hit the tuna over the head? And I sort of went, man, come on. And then it kind of got me thinking, like, as human beings, we have double standards in how we feel about certain animals. And I don't know, I think it's just safe to say there's certain animals, whales, horses, dogs, cats, others among them, that people just feel differently about. I am not suggesting for even a single second that some animals don't deserve to be treated ethically or humanely, even if they're involved, I mean, if they're being raised on a farm for food. But I just think there's something about the live horse export that resonates differently with people more than it might with any other animal.
I love this country. We talked about that. Got pride in this country. But I'd be lying if I didn't say we're a nation of hypocrites. I have smashed more than the odd bug in my day. I've never smashed a dog or a cat or a whale or a dolphin or a horse. So yes, I'm a hypocrite.
Well, it's real talk. I wanted to ask you about something before we go. You, when you were appointed to the Senate, faced some fire. And more than most, maybe more than any senator, certainly in recent memory. And some of it was based on your perceived political affiliations. Some of it was based on comments that you had made about a quarter century ago on the radio about leadership in Indigenous communities and on First Nations reserves. And I wanted to make sure that this audience heard a portion of your first speech, your first address in the Senate. It's about 15 minutes. We're not going to play all of it. But Chuck, I wanted to play some to make sure that every single person that listens to or watches Real Talk heard this, and then I want to give you a chance to respond. This was Charles Adler's first ever address to his colleagues in the Senate of Canada.
And because empathy is not unavailable to me, I need to apologize now, without qualification, for unnecessary pain caused by my words that I take responsibility for in this hallowed chamber. This has to do with remarks I made during a radio broadcast 25 years ago. They garnered no media attention at the time because at the time there was nothing about my remarks that appeared newsworthy or controversial. But some of those words, which were republished at the time of my appointment 3 months ago, simply do not fit with the times we are living in. I would never use those words today, and I won't repeat them here. 3 months ago, when they were exhumed from history, they looked ugly and obscene to my eyes, and without any doubt to the eyes of Indigenous people. It doesn't matter that my motivation was love for my listeners, including some of my most loyal listeners, Indigenous people. It doesn't matter that I was trying to be helpful when I was being critical of some First Nations leadership. I permitted myself to use language that, in the light of this day, is excessive and offensive and hurtful. Those words are on the record. There is nothing I can do to remove them. The only thing I can do for the record now, for Indigenous Manitobans, for Indigenous Canadians, and for this Canadian Senate, is to add 3 more words to the record. I am sorry.
That was Charles Adler in his first address to his colleagues in the Senate.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to write them. It was tough to say them. You know, we often tell people in public life, don't say I'm sorry. It just makes things even worse for you. But what was toughest was looking at those words. They were truly obscene. They were hideous. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed of myself. And I was really ashamed that my name, which is my father's name after all, was now forever going to be associated with those words. And for anyone who wishes to criticize me, they can always say, well, you know, he may be a good guy, may be good on the horse issue and some other things, but boy, what he said 25 years ago was absolutely horrendous.
I'm proud of you. You have more class and character in your pinky finger than a lot of people. And I have to say, when you said those words, the day you said them, I welled up with pride, and I do so today as well. And I know that this audience does right now. Steve is in our live chat. He says, Charles Adler is a class act. And just wanted to let you know, Chuck, that it's amazing to see you accept this responsibility, this calling to serve in the Senate. It was amazing to see you address that issue head on and make a no bones about it, unqualified apology, which I thought was remarkable. And probably, if I know you well, and I think I do, you didn't give yourself any other option. Did you know that apology was going to be part of your first ever remarks in the Red Chamber? Was that a no-brainer for you?
Well, I knew once the story was out there. I mean, I was stunned when I saw those remarks, and my first take when I saw them was, "This has got to be distorted. I couldn't possibly have said that. That's not me." But that was me, and when I think about it in historical terms, it wasn't controversial at all. I mean, there were no complaints. There was one complaint lodged by the Grand Chief because he was involved in the piece of business that triggered the comments. But no regular people, Indigenous or otherwise, were commenting because it wasn't controversial. But once I saw those comments, no, there was no mind that I had to apologize, and there was no doubt in my mind that once I saw those comments, which were, as I say, exhumed from history just after the appointment was made, that it would have to be in my maiden speech, and I'd have to do it, as you say, without qualification, not because I want to be classy. I just want to be me, and once again, I'm honoring my father's name. You know, it's about my heritage, and my heritage, as I pointed out in the maiden speech, was filled with obscene behavior. I mean, what could be more obscene than mass murder, which is what my heritage involved. I mean, I never got to meet my paternal grandparents and many uncles and aunts and cousins because they were extinguished at Auschwitz. I don't even have a gravesite. I mean, they went up in smoke. It's worse than a bad movie. It's called genocide. And so for me to look at those words from 25 years ago and say, my God, I am saying these things about some of these people who have suffered the worst indignities in Canada, in Canadian history. It's Canada's original sin. That's what truth and reconciliation is all about. You know, I looked at the words and I went, I can't believe that based on what happened to my own people, my own heritage, that my hands would be soiled with this stuff. Nobody put a gun to my head telling me to say those things. And I can't say that, well, the pressure of ratings, the pressure of making revenue. No corporation, no union, nobody told me to say those things. I said them, they came spontaneously from me. And so every time we have a discussion with anyone in this country about things like bias, prejudice, hate, we always have to ask ourselves the question, are we as human beings potentially doing the things that we're accusing others of? And the answer at the end of the trail has to be yes. All human beings have the capacity to hate. I hate that about us, but I'd be a liar if I didn't admit that it's true.
Cherie's watching on the live chat on YouTube. She says, learning to do better and apologizing for past behavior is honorable. Justin just says, bravo. Donna, how about this? I know you'll like this, Chuck. She says, growth. That's what we strive for as humans. Donna says, I'm so proud of you, Charles. You'll help many others continue to grow. You always have. And that's why you're perfect for the Senate. That from Donna. I love it. And I want to look you in the eyes when I say this one, and I want to pass this along. This is going to be the last comment we read to you. There's a ton of them. People can go back and watch the live comments on YouTube, of course. I know this is going to mean a lot to you. This from Nash, who's watching us live. Nash says, Charles Adler is the reason I became interested in politics when I was a teenager, and he is who helped shape my fiscal conservative vote. That from Nash. You had a real impact on a teenage. Hey, you and I both worked a lot of years in talk radio. You more than me. And the assumption always was that the audience was quite a bit older. And I always say to people, Johnny and I take a look at our analytics and like who watches us and our TikTok audience and our YouTube audience, and we see the percentages, and they're not the biggest percentages, but when we see that there's like high school students watching or listening, when we see that there's university or college aged audience members that are participating in what we're doing, it honestly fills my heart. And I would imagine that comment from Nash probably has the same impact on you.
Ryan, you and your career, and I and mine are the people who are talkers. We all know this. Yes, the audience generally is over the age of 35, but there are a lot of people well under the age of 35. And what we say does help in many cases to shape how they feel about liberty, freedom, Canada, democracy. I'll be honored in a couple of weeks to do something that makes me very, very sad. But I've been asked to do it by our fellow talker, and many people in this audience know who I'm talking about. He's extremely popular in Alberta and everywhere in the country, a national talk show host by the name of Roy Green. He's got stage 4 cancer. He's got to spend more time in trying to stay alive than trying to stay on the radio. And so his final broadcast is on Sunday, January 26th, just a couple of weeks from now. And he has asked me to participate in that final broadcast with him.
Wow!
As I say, it's a sad thing for any one of us to experience. But how do I say no to something like that? And I'll do my best to tell people about the significance of Roy's contribution, the significance of talk radio, and it's going to be impossible for us to do that without talking about the things that Nash and Donna and others are saying. Our responsibility in front of that coveted microphone to influence people, to shape minds. And yes, we can joke around about a lot of things, but ultimately we do take this country seriously, as we should. We do take democracy and liberty seriously, as we should. And nobody has championed all of the above better than Roy Green. And this country will miss him dearly. And I want to say that about Roy and to the country on the 26th of January on the Chorus Radio Network.
A class act. As always, Senator Charles Adler, I'm sorry to let the audience know that you will not be joining us every Monday. I know that some people were hoping for that, but from time to time, in so many ways, as we'll chat with other members of the Senate, we'll be thrilled to welcome you back for delivery of takes like nobody else can. Thanks for making time for us today, pal. It's wonderful to hear your voice again.
Look, the whole privilege in the Senate, it's all wonderful, but I have to give context to this like everything else. I dearly miss some of my previous life, and there's nothing I miss in my pre-Senate life more than Mondays with Ryan Jesperson and Real Talkers. It contributed a great deal to my life. It's not just a diversion, a distraction, entertainment. It is part of what I think of as my give back to this country, my service to this country that I love and adore. I love what you do to this country and for this country. I love what your Real Talkers do. I love what Albertans are doing. Thank you, Alberta. Thank you, Ryan Jesperson. Thank you, Real Talkers.
You got it, Chuck. Much appreciated. That's Senator Charles Adler joining us live from his home in Manitoba. You can let us know what you think about that interview by sending us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I would imagine that Chuck's got you all fired up about something if the trend holds true, including his work on those live horse exports. Of course, we present in courtesy or partnership with our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, the Flamethrower, every Friday. If you've got a hot take to share, you can send it to us. Make sure you put Flamethrower in the subject line in those emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. More of your comments from the live chat. And Jason Leslie joining us. He's got his eye on Alberta Business on behalf of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. That coming up in 90 seconds or less. But first, I want to let you know that this conversation happens with the support of our friends at California Closets. You know, John, I read something interesting. They said over this past weekend, they said this is right around the time in January where people start to forget about their New Year's resolutions. Mm-hmm. They said this is like right about the time where people start to forget about the promises that they made to themselves for the new year. And so this is a special message. I want to speak directly to those that are absolutely adamant on getting their life organized, on getting themselves decluttered, on getting everything exactly how you want it to look moving forward. You know, there's just a wonderful peace of mind that comes with getting organized, and California Closets can help get you on the right track. You can find them online at californiaclosets.ca. That's where you can book that free consultation. Their team of designers can show you how you can make the most of your space with their custom organizational systems, and they can work with any budget. Whether you're looking at your garage, maybe it's your guest bedroom that's doubling as a home office right now. It could be your kitchen, your entertainment room, wherever the family gathers to watch movies or catch hockey games. Custom designed to fit your space and budget is California Closets. Had a chance to hit the road just this weekend to pop in on the beautiful town of Jasper and see how everybody's doing out there. Of course, this Jasper in January festival is underway, and they do just an amazing job out there. Well, you know what I had to do on my way out there, John? As I was heading out to Jasper, I had to stop at the Friesen Brothers in Hinton. And let me tell you, there is nothing for a road trip like the grab-and-go fare from Friesen Brothers. We picked up a nice veggie platter, nice and fresh. We picked up their sourdough cinnamon buns. I'm going to be honest, a couple of beef short ribs to gnaw on the drive out there. Nobody does it like Friesen Brothers does. In 16 different Alberta communities, they're celebrating their 70th anniversary in 2025. Still 100% family owned. How great is that? What a legacy. Alberta grown, Alberta owned. It's Friesen Brothers. You can check out their Family Essentials flyer. We love using that as a family. Online, you can see it at friesen.com. And a quick note, a shout out to those of you who are making 2025 in your own personal life a year of professional development. You want to get educated or up to speed, ready to embrace new opportunities in the job market. Whatever it is, Athabasca University has you covered as Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. You know, the numbers don't lie. It's actually astounding when you start looking at the data. 94+% of alumni report the fact that they're satisfied with the quality of their education at Athabasca University. More than 92%, more than 9 out of 10 say they're in a job related to their field of study. That's just a couple of the things that makes AU so unique. You can learn more about the admissions process and start to design or select your custom path by visiting their website today. That's athabascau.ca. Athabasca University, Canada's open university. How nice it is to wish a happy new year to Jason Leslie from Alberta Chambers of Commerce. Of course, monthly, you and your team have your eye on Alberta business, and I think it's safe to say, with a presidential inauguration looming, with a leadership race to replace the former leader of the Liberals and the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, the Conservatives surging in the polls, there's a whole lot to keep an eye on right now in the context of Alberta business. Probably the biggest story over the weekend would be the Premier of Alberta down shaking hands, rubbing shoulders with the President-elect Donald Trump. What do you make of the mission?
I think she's making the case for Alberta, and that's what we needed her to do.
Yeah. So what would be? I mean, obviously people are talking about tariffs right now, oil and gas. What would you hope that would be the talking points, or maybe the key focal points for the Premier in her conversation with the President-elect?
I think it's the things that she's been saying publicly. You know, we're an incredible partner of the United States, and that relationship is mutually beneficial. Energy is obviously core to that. You know, a significant portion of Alberta's trade to the U.S., and the vast majority is oil and gas exports, and the U.S. depends on those. So let's strengthen those and look at ways we can work together to benefit, you know, consumers, business, both sides of the border.
It's probably fair to categorize Donald Trump as the least predictable world leader. Although I guess you could probably make an argument for like North Korea, Iran. But the point being, it's not politics per usual. You're going to be negotiating with the President, Trump, much differently probably than presidents before him, Republicans and Democrats alike. The threat of tariffs is obviously one that has been resonating, I think, across the country, safe to say, in particular for people that are involved in certain industries. But I think generally speaking, people understand or at least have an inclination of how that would impact their own bottom line, impact maybe their family or their business's own finances. I see a lot of people saying Trump's a negotiator. You know, he's trying to instill fear. He's trying to set the tone, or this is a negotiation tactic. How seriously do you take the threat of tariffs, and how does it land with the membership of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce? You got hundreds and hundreds of members, obviously.
I think the risks related to that are very real, and I think the Premier noted that in some of her comments following that trip this weekend. It's not a surprise, nor is it inconsistent with the President-elect's past leadership and priorities in his previous term, and we as Canada and as Albertans, we need to be prepared for that and hope that the hard work that's being done by the Premier and other representatives of Canada are going to be able to reinforce the benefits of this relationship and the importance of a strong economic union.
Is there something that certain industries or even individual businesses can do you think, to prepare for, either to brace themselves for political uncertainty or to prepare for tariffs or whatever the case may be?
Absolutely. If you're looking at cross-border trade, where can you strengthen and shore up your supply chains? Look for alternatives. Where can look domestically, where you may have procured elsewhere, perhaps south of the border. And just start getting ahead of it and planning for the potential disruption that could have. And at the same time, we would anticipate, hopefully, that while this process might take some time for everything to shake out, that at the end of the day, as this renegotiation process may go forward, that it lands in a place that's still positive for Alberta business.
Is this an opportunity in a sense? Like, is there a silver lining here for businesses to, or even entire industries to kind of treat this as maybe a bit of a wake up call or a reminder that sort of that conventional wisdom of putting all your eggs in one basket sometimes isn't the best or the smartest or the most prudent approach?
Absolutely. The Canadian Chamber is going to be leading a strong effort with provincial chambers here in Canada to address internal barriers to trade. Just cross-border interprovincial trade is a significant impact on our GDP with how hard it is to just move goods east-west. And so, that's potentially estimates. Trevor Toome, one of your past guests, has estimated that there's potentially 4% in GDP on the table just from removing barriers to interprovincial trade. And so that's a real opportunity that the Chamber Network is going to be leading on. Yeah, we were riffing on this last week, and the president oftentimes talks about America first. Pierre Poilievre basically tweeted last week, Canada first. And it was in the context where he said, the leader of the official opposition, Mr. Poilievre, the Prime Minister Trudeau, within hours of one another, both tweeted about Canada and the 51st state idea. I think Trudeau said there's not a snowball's chance in hell it happens. Pierre Poilievre says it would never happen, period. And then he went on, and he kind of went on a bit of a rant talking about the importance of that Canada-U.S. relationship. But then he basically said, we will be Canada first. And I think for industry, that's an interesting thing for somebody who's polling on track to become, so you have to offer all these qualifiers because, nothing happens till it happens. But somebody who is polling toward being the next Prime Minister of Canada, for him to put that out there and say, we will approach it as a Canada first approach, kind of an interesting bit of language that you don't always see from federal leaders. It's a tricky situation to be a potential leader of a country with these kind of scope of potential negotiations forthcoming. And there is this gap in time where we don't necessarily have a clear elected leader of the country, and people are making comments. At the end of the day, we do have competent ambassadors, highly competent ambassadors, that's going to be representing Canada. And we hope that will resolve itself positively.
Yeah, you referenced this with the change in leadership, a change at the top. Canada will have a new prime minister no matter what, even if for only a short period of time when the Liberals and Liberal Party members choose their new leader. What happens to business? And what happens? I mean, talk to us about, some people have said there's kind of this 100 days as Parliament is prorogued. Charles Adler was just talking about it a little bit as the Liberals choose their new leader. And then, we assume that there will be a federal election to follow, obviously in short order. What's the impact or the influence on business, if at all?
At the end of the day, business flourishes when there's stability. And so we hope that process moves forward as expeditiously and clearly as possible to help businesses plan and anticipate what might be coming from a policy perspective going forward.
Talked to Danielle Smith on the 19th of December. If people want, they can check out that interview. It's kind of a bit of a year-ender, a look back and a look ahead. And we talked to her about the potential of a deficit budget in Alberta in 2025. She didn't say no. As a matter of fact, she kind of took the question, and I was a little bit maybe surprised at her candor. People can check out that full interview on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. How does business prepare for that? And you and your team at Alberta Chambers, what's the kind of the mental approach and the focus over the next 11 months or so?
We've been strong advocates for the province to continue, fiscal discipline and prudence through the Alberta fiscal framework. And the Premier, I think, is, I would speculate, is bracing for the potential impacts of what the economic influences could be of tariffs on the economy. And that obviously has an influence on provincial coffers and revenues. And so from a business perspective, we are encouraging the province to think about fiscal competitiveness. That's a big deal when we're thinking about the United States. The tariffs aren't one of the only policy levers that the president-elect has signaled. He's talked about tax changes that could potentially make Alberta less competitive fiscally. We're promoting with the province that they focus on economic resilience and fiscal resilience, and that might mean tightening the belt.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what would be like a tangible example of something you'd like to see from the provincial government?
Tangible example, ways to make business more competitive. For example, insurance premiums tax. It's it's a tax on business, and that costs nearly $1 billion a year, and it also costs consumers. That's one way to make life and business more affordable and competitive here in Alberta. There are other measures they could do to just rein in spending and make sure that that the province has the fiscal capacity to sustain the services that are core.
I don't want to go apples and oranges here, but you look at what's happening in California, and I know that there have been insurance providers that have already pulled out of California or that have stopped offering certain insurance coverage in California, and you can forecast or even imagine what the ultimate cost of these Palisades fires will be, and obviously devastating for people. The cost to rebuild will be prohibitive, and I have to assume there will be implications on insurance companies operating in the state of California. Insurance has become unaffordable for a lot of people in the province of Alberta as well. For people on a personal front, their homes, their cars, what have you, but also for businesses too. Has that been something that Alberta Chambers has done specific advocacy work on, insurance in particular? And if so, can you take us into what you think might be a way out for people that are right now looking at it with, to be quite honest, a sense of despair, a sense of hopelessness, a sense of trying to figure out exactly how they're going to continue to operate?
Yeah, we've done a lot of research through our Alberta Perspectives program, and insurance premiums tax consistently is ranked by business as a top barrier in terms of the benefits versus the impacts that it has. There is no real benefit to business, unlike some of the other kind of transaction costs that they deal with. There's some sort of benefit even though you're paying a cost. That's not one of them, and it does make insurance more costly. And you're absolutely right. Insurance has definitely impacted both consumers, but business community through big fires that we've had, obviously Fort McMurray, Jasper, a lot of wildfires, and those types of natural disasters really do impact cost of insurance. The province has done a lot of work on this already, starting with auto insurance reform this past year, and there may be more coming, in the future to try and address some of those costs and to bring down the cost burdens.
Yeah, cost. It's all about costs, right? I mean, you're talking about you want to see the province tighten its belt, maintain fiscal competitiveness. People have been talking about their insurance costs, their utilities. It's all about cost. Despite all of this, is there reason for optimism this year? Are you looking at some of the storylines? Are you looking at some of the contributing factors and going, hey, this could be a really big year. This could be a really healthy year for businesses?
Well, at the end of the day, a strong U.S., competitive U.S. is, historically been very good for Canada. And we want to try and partner up on that potential growth. And oil prices have stayed higher than what they could have, and that has certainly been very positive for the province. And potentially a more business-friendly approach to federal policy might be in the books, and we certainly would encourage the federal government, whoever shows up at the end of that election process, to really look at how it can strengthen Canada's competitiveness.
Generally speaking, the tail of the tape, have federal elections been good for business?
I wouldn't say in the last while.
You may not say the outcome of the federal elections has been good for business, but what about the campaigns?
In what sense?
Well, because I just kind of wonder, you have a government that has a mandate for, let's say, depending if it's a minority or majority government, but let's say a government has a mandate between 2 to 5 years, right? Years 2, 3 can sometimes be painful for businesses, for citizens, depending on who's impacted by policies. And some of these government initiatives, spending programs, what have you, can be ambitious and can come with a cost. Whereas when it's a campaign period, you've got the incumbent, and then you've got the challengers, the opposition, those that wish to form government, that are trying to capture the attention of the electorate. They're trying to win and secure and preserve the faith of the electorate. They want to be the ones that are given the mandate, and so I think that they're more motivated to reflect in policy what they're hearing at the doors. They're to put an alternative in front of voters, in this case in front of Canadians, that will resonate. And I wonder if this, I think that sometimes there's kind of like the slogans and platitudes, and Pierre Poilievre talks about axe the tax. It rhymes, it resonates, it fits on a bumper sticker. That's great. But if he actually finds a way to cut taxes in meaningful fashion without bankrupting the federal government or without putting the nation in a tough spot, then that's ultimately good for people. Meantime, probably a wake-up call for the federal Liberals. I don't know if anybody seriously believes that they can save their status as government. I think that it's pretty obvious most people have accepted or acknowledged that there's a change coming, but you have to assume that the Liberal Party will reflect and say, listen, this has been popular. We can point to proof of performance here, but maybe over here we need to make some changes. And so if we are reelected, here's what we'll do. They're trying to win back the faith of the electorate. They're trying to convince people that they deserve another mandate. At the end of the day, in theory, if all of these parties are participating in this exercise, and maybe this is kind of like a Pollyanna view on it all, but I think in its purest sense, this is what politics is supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to work, is politicians listening to the public, having those concerns resonate, and then develop a policy that they promise that they'll roll out that will address those concerns and ultimately make life better for people. In its purest form, that's, in my mind, how elections should work.
I think on paper, too.
Well, this is why I ask you, the tail of the tape. Have they proven to be good for people or not? I don't know. I just think like when a government's mid-mandate, it's really not. I mean, they will say that they're always listening to people, but they don't have to. They don't have to be reelected. Like Danielle Smith doesn't have to worry about getting reelected for another few years. Donald Trump doesn't have to worry about getting reelected ever. And you have to wonder if that's maybe going to affect his policy a little bit.
I think we would expect he's going to come out hard out of the gate. Given that this is his last term and given where the Senate and the House, are at and his ability to move policy forward. Here in Canada, you're absolutely right in terms of being able to frame what the priorities are. The last time I was able to be here to guest with you, which is always such a pleasure, we were talking very specifically about Mr. Poilievre's position on business priorities and the importance of communicating those priorities in a way that resonates with the public.
Yeah.
And that's what he's going to respond to. So certainly him putting that message out early it has given everyone who's advocating for business an opportunity to consider how we communicate what those priorities are and why they matter.
Yeah, exactly. How do you factor into it, right? On our live chat powered by Park Power, Tracy says business was lucky, a lot of it, to be bailed out during the COVID outbreak. Goes on to say, but there are those businesses that were able to at least be online, to operate online, and they're further ahead. She says, I'm so happy to see the Alberta Chambers of Commerce start working with systems. Which is interesting. We've got others that are talking about this. Get this, like some of you saying, someone reporting that their son in BC couldn't even get flood insurance. This was MA who says son couldn't get renter's insurance in BC because his building was in a flood zone. I think that's going to become more of a regular issue for people, definitely. Wise Kyle says campaigns are won on slogans, governments are won on good policy, and the Liberals got neither. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Slogans to come, I'm sure, once they've got a new leader. Yeah, anyway, love having this engagement here on the live chat. If you want to learn more about what Jason and his team are doing at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, you can check out where members matter and benefits count, where community is everything, at abchamber.ca. And you guys have a ton of stuff coming up. I know you've got your political action day coming up. You've always got the polling happening, these Alberta Perspectives surveys. What's one thing that you're really excited about coming up with Alberta Chambers?
Really excited for our political action day coming up on March 13th. We've got it penciled in with Premier Smith and her team, and as well as the leader of the opposition. And those are always fantastic events for getting in front of government and communicating just to what we were just talking about. What are the priorities of the business community?
Yeah, and I've been proud to participate in these for several years now, and I've always been really impressed at how you and your team at Alberta Chambers, you get the Premier there, you get the leader of the official opposition there, you have your MLA dinner. I know you can't guarantee access to people, but what I will say is for business owners and for movers and shakers, that is the room that you want to be in. If you want to have your voice heard and obviously be part of that conversation. That's March 13th, the 2025 Political Action Day and the MLA dinner. You can learn more about getting your tickets to that and participating, becoming a member with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, all of it on the website at abchamber.ca. We'll have it in the show notes, obviously, as well on the podcast and on YouTube, so you can make it nice and easy to link.
And let me plug the fact that we have a fantastic media panel as part
Oh,
of
you
that.
knew, yeah, you had to say that.
Fantastic media panel, and you are just such a pillar of that panel. And we just can't wait to hear your comments unfiltered.
It's kind of you to say. Yeah, this is, I think, the audience, we've mentioned this before, but you have you adhere to Chatham House rules. Which means that there's no microphones. I mean, there's microphones for inside the room, but there's no broadcast, there's no recording, there's no tweeting of any of the statements, of any of the comments, and so you get really candid conversation. I think for me, I typically kind of say what I think anyway on Real Talk. I wouldn't say I really hold back on Real Talk, but some of my fellow panelists that you bring in, these are like longtime correspondents and columnists and journalists that typically are they don't infuse opinion into their work. They don't infuse opinion into their reporting, but you unleash them. You turn them loose during this media panel, and it's always been really, really interesting and entertaining to see some familiar names really shooting from the hip. And that's an opportunity that people don't usually get. So it's almost like everybody's the guest host on Real Talk for a day. That's what it's like.
And it is so fun to be part of.
Yeah, it really is. That's the Political Action Day presented by the Alberta Chambers of Commerce coming up on March 13th. And there's a whole lot more. You can check out their news and events link on the website and learn more about all of these resources. You guys have stuff coming up as well. The Alberta Business Awards of Distinction coming up in June. You've got your AGM coming up in Medicine Hat a little bit later on in the year. That'll be May 29th kicking off. So we won't clutter people's brains with all the dates right now, but it's all neatly organized on the website. It's always nice to see you, pal, and thanks for making time for us in studio.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
What is it, the 13th? What is it today, the 13th? We still say Happy New Year? Or I think so. Happy New Year.
Well, I'm wishing you a happy New Year.
I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
I don't care what people think. I'm going to say it. Happy New Year to you and your team. Of course, CEO Shauna Feth as well. And we'll be back with the Eye on Alberta Business in partnership with our friends at the Alberta Chambers every single month. So you can stay up to speed as an entrepreneur or as an engaged Albertan who wants informed perspective on what's happening with Alberta's bottom line, with businesses in Alberta and the like. Some really neat storylines, again, presented by the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. As we wrap up every week here on the show, courtesy of our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy, an opportunity to focus on the silver linings, on the positive storylines, its positive reflections. And we're mentioning to you guys, listen, we love to hear your positive reflections. If there's a story that resonates with you, we want to hear about it. And that's exactly what Cynthia did. Cynthia sent us a DM on Instagram, and she said, have you ever seen this installation? Have you ever heard about Matthew Stanford Robison? And we had not. So she shared this. You can find it on the This Is How Things Work Instagram channel, their Instagram account, but we want to show you this. This is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it starts in heartbreak, okay? This is a father, Ernest Robison, who lost his son. His son Matthew was born in 1988 and facing significant challenges due to a spinal cord injury at birth that left him wheelchair-bound and with limited mobility. But despite these hardships, he brought immense joy to his family. Obviously, tragically, in 1999, Matthew passed away at the age of 11, but left behind a legacy of love and inspiration. His dad, to forever honor his beautiful boy, designed a headstone. It's located in the Utah cemetery where Matthew was laid to rest, and it depicts Matthew rising from his wheelchair with arms outstretched, symbolizing his liberation from physical constraints. His dad says the design represents the family's belief in a life beyond earthly struggles, and it serves as a tribute to Matthew's resilient spirit. This powerful memorial, which has now been in place for more than 25 years, has resonated with countless individuals, offering comfort and inspiration to others, sometimes complete strangers who have experienced loss or other challenges. And the image of Matthew's release from his burdens reflects a universal message of hope, love, and eternal peace, a remarkable tribute. And through it, a quarter century later, Matthew's story continues to inspire and remind us of the enduring strength of the human spirit. Absolutely beautiful, and a moment of positive reflection amid the tragedy of losing a child. We want to thank Cynthia, the Real Talker, who passed that along by way of our Real Talk RJ Instagram DM. You can submit your positive reflection anytime by way of our social media channels or an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Positive Reflections is proudly presented weekly on Real Talk by our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get a free quote today on solar by visiting their website. You can link to it by way of the sponsors tab on our website. We want to thank you, Real Talkers, for being a part of today's show, for sharing it with your friends, whether they're business owners and entrepreneurs that would benefit from the eye on Alberta Business, whether they're involved in the ag trade and would be curious for Charles Adler's take on live horse exports, or if they're talking about Donald Trump, Danielle Smith, and all of the other top political storylines of the day. Real Talk's got you covered on YouTube, on podcast, and of course on all the social media channels. We want to thank you for making this show part of your routine today, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.